What sets the protagonist of this story apart is that no matter how many times he dies, he is always reborn. This has happened so many times, it's not even funny anymore. And in each rebirth, he appears in a different world and time, from the most primitive civilizations to those that have conquered space. This time, our hero's lack of care cost him his life in a battle against a monster, and he was reborn as a baby again. But he's a reincarnation expert for a reason, so let's see what he's up to this time. As soon as he opens his eyes, he begins to observe the surrounding environment. From the type of furniture and decor in the room, he's sure he's somewhere reminiscent of the Middle Ages. With all the experience accumulated in his past lives, he realizes that he is not on Earth, which makes him wonder if this time he has ended up in a fantasy world. Personally, he always found science fiction worlds more comfortable. They were clean, technological, and had many advantages. But after looking around, at least he's glad he wasn't born into a poor family. They even have maids, which leads him to believe this must be an upper middle class family in a fantasy world. More than anything, he is happy because this beautiful woman is his mother. He makes the most of every kiss he receives from her. Although the language she speaks is unknown to him, there is something he can understand without needing the words. The way she holds him so carefully, afraid of letting him fall, and the heat in her eyes show that he has a loving mother in this life, and that in itself is already a blessing. Throughout his countless lives, he met different types of mothers, but maternal love was not always present. Sadly, he was abandoned shortly after birth and even exploited as child labor. But this time, he feels that this life will not be as difficult as many others he has lived. It is then that a maid enters the room and insists on holding the prince, saying that the lady may be tired. Mentioning the word prince takes him by surprise. He didn't expect to be reborn as royalty this time. Even so, he notices that his mother doesn't seem so happy and soon discovers why. His mother reminds the maid that people may not consider this child a real prince. Apparently, this woman, Rana, had humble beginnings. She was also once a servant, as was the woman named Chaina, who now works for her. Rana asks Chaina to call her by name, without formalities, as they are alone. She believes that the only reason they call her son Prince is because he has the king's blood running through his veins. However, the truth is much less honorable. This boy also carries the blood of someone of humble station. Rana already knows that the nobles and royal concubines have rejected her son, saying he has no right to succession or power because of her origins. Seeing his mother immersed in sadness, the boy quickly tries to wipe her tears, which makes her genuinely happy. She finds it moving to see the baby trying to comfort her. The maid, however, ignores the gesture, saying it was just a random movement of a baby. Oh, and the boy's name in this life is AL. We know for sure that he was really trying to comfort his mother. He personally doesn't mind having no right to succession or loyal followers. In fact, he is happy about it. Staying in the shadows means that powerful aristocrats won't pay attention to him, making him virtually invisible to the rest of the royal family. This pleases him a lot. He is ready to live like a carefree prince with nothing to worry about. Your gut tells you this 101st life is going to be amazing. He feels good about himself for having royal and common blood at the same time. For him, this is like winning the lottery, since all he wants is a simple life, away from the dramas of the nobles. Rana and Chaina keep taking care of him. Rana looks at her son, sees how happy he looks, and wishes he can stay that way, but she knows she can't protect him forever. When AL hears the word power, he snaps out of his thoughts and starts sucking his thumb. He reflects on his situation. In a world where everything revolves around family and status, being a prince who can't inherit anything is like being a pawn with no throne to fight for. He realizes he has no power, support, or future. It assumes that people will only use it until they no longer need it. But even so, he reminds himself that his mother doesn't need to worry. He's confident he can handle it. After all, he's an expert in reincarnation. 3 months pass, and Rana watches Ale sleeping. She thinks he looks like a little angel. She strokes his hair, wishing it was as soft as the king's. At that moment, Chaina announces that the carriage is ready. Rana quickly kisses Ale on the cheek and asks him to behave before leaving. When the door closes behind her, Ale is left alone, already preparing for the challenges that this new life will bring. Ale wasn't really sleeping. He was pretending. He laughs, but quickly covers his mouth so Chaina doesn't rush in to see what's going on. Ale thinks it's hard to be so charming, especially as a baby with everyone watching him. He then sits up, ready to do something no baby should be able to do: strengthen himself. He knows that time is short, and he needs power to make his life easier. In all worlds, he knows one thing is always true: strength is everything. If he is strong, no one will bother him. While cultivating his energy, Aiel begins to think about all his past lives and how he never wasted them. One of his greatest achievements was creating a method that allows you to train even as a baby, the Qiang Origin Creation Technique. This technique was invented in his 30th reincarnation and completely changed the game. This method allows him to work on both his natural Qi and his origin Qi at the same time. The best part is that no one can find out that he is training. Aiel does some quick calculations and concludes that he will have 60 years of accumulated internal Qi by the time he is 10 and 180 years by the time he is 20 if he he continues at this rate. Once you get through the initial phases, you won't even need to concentrate as much. He could even train while relaxing in Chaina's arms if he wanted. To speed things up, AL uses her energy to stimulate the nerves, moving all the chi to her brain and frontal lobe. The heat from this process spreads throughout your body, causing you to sweat profusely and feel excruciating pain. As the energy builds, IL feels like she's about to lose control. He screams but quickly stops himself. China hears the noise and runs to his room, but when she looks, she sees IL lying in the crib, pretending to sleep. She wonders if he needs a diaper change and leans in to sniff. AL panics inside, knowing that any touch from her could ruin all her hard work. To his relief, China feels nothing and mumbles something about him having a nightmare before leaving the room. As soon as she leaves, AL's body feels like a miniature furnace, with energy leaking from all sides. He struggles to keep everything under control, feeling like his body might not survive the pressure. Still, he persists, determined not to let anything or anyone control his life, even if he has to risk everything. Ale is determined to use the Qiang origin creation technique to become powerful enough to live comfortably and on his own terms. When he finally stabilizes, another scream escapes him, loud enough for Chaina to hear outside the door. She rushes to the bedroom, thinking something terrible has happened, and finds Ayel sweating profusely, but still lying down, appearing to sleep peacefully. Deciding that he might need extra care, she rushes off to prepare an herbal bath. As soon as she leaves, Ayel jumps to her feet, happy that everything he was doing is finally working. When Chaina comes back, she carries him in her arms and says nice things about him being so strong. Ayel just smiles, feeling lucky that she didn't notice anything strange. Thanks to his mana concentration technique, his body is constantly absorbing energy, even when he is just eating or sleeping. He is excited to learn that in just 3 years, he will be stronger than most adults. When he turns 10, his power will be unbeatable, and just thinking about it makes him very happy. As Chaina holds him, she hears a strange noise coming from upstairs, but is distracted by Ael's happy face. Meanwhile, Ael is already imagining her future, powerful, respected, and living like a king. He can't wait for that future to arrive. It has only been 5 months since Ael was born, but thanks to her mana absorption technique, her physical strength and internal energy are far ahead of any baby her age. Crawling along the floor, he doesn't stop pushing himself, knowing he's on the right path to surpassing everyone soon. While he is focused on his training, Lady Rana walks in and picks him up off the mat. She brings him a toy he wasn't expecting, and for a moment his eyes are glued to it. Seeing her disappointment when he hesitates, Ael quickly starts playing with the toy, pretending to be having a great time. Inside, however, he feels a very obvious shame from others. Still, Lady Rana and Chaina laugh at how happy he looks. They comment on how beautiful and perfect he is. Ael secretly loves the compliments, but knows it's mostly thanks to her mother's beauty. Still, he decides to enjoy these moments of being the fun baby, knowing that this time won't last forever. Suddenly, the baby protagonist shows that he is not happy, and Chaina cannot understand what he wants at first, but in reality, all he wants is food. He starts crying to make it obvious. Finally, Chaina gets it right and gives him some milk. While he is busy drinking, the adults start talking about money. They mention that funds for the house have been running low since yesterday. Even though Ael needs adequate food as a prince, there simply isn't enough money. The mansion's budget has been cut a lot this year, and even raising a child is becoming difficult. This is quite strange for a royal family. Ael hears the maids talking about this. Before anyone could say anything, they mentioned that Ael's mother, Lady Rana, would have to eat less to save money for everyone. If she didn't do this, no one would survive the season. Ael couldn't believe it and thought it could only be a joke, but her mother remained positive, saying it didn't matter if she didn't survive, as long as others could. Hearing this made Ael very upset. How could they treat their mother like that? She may not be powerful or important in the eyes of the nobles, but she is still his mother. Even though they gave birth to a prince, neither of them has real status or protection. He begins to understand why his mother is always leaving in a carriage. She has been trying to meet with the king, but seems to keep failing. Ael thinks this is cruel. Even though the king doesn't care about her, she is still the mother of his son. How could he allow others to treat her so badly? Ael starts crying again because of this, and Chaina hands him over to Lady Rana. In her arms, he calms down. Even though he's just a baby, Ael wants to help his mother. He knows he can't do much, but he needs to think of something. Winter is coming, and things are only going to get worse with the cost of heating. In his crib, he begins to use his baby genius intelligence to find a solution. Then suddenly, he has an idea. While looking at the coal in the fireplace, Ael remembers that coal is made of carbon, just like diamonds. His brilliant reasoning sees there as a way to solve the financial problem. If he can turn coal into diamonds, everything could change. Even though he wants to get out of the crib and start right away, he knows that his baby body is still weak. Instead, he decides to use his mana to float out safely. No one knows how useful coal can be anymore, but for Ael it's like finding treasure. So he brushes aside any self-indulgence and gets to work while everyone else is asleep. Ael focuses her mana, combining it with heat to press the coal. He pours all his energy into compressing the material, repeating enchanted spells to remain firm. The process is difficult, and the pressure pushes him back, but he remains focused, refusing to give up. He keeps thinking about his mother's happiness at seeing what he created. Suddenly, an explosion of soot shoots out of the chimney. AL runs to the fireplace and starts sifting through the mess until she finally finds something. A sparkling diamond created with her own power. The beauty of the jewelry leaves you speechless. Now he just needs to figure out how to get him to his mother without arousing suspicion. Feeling satisfied, he rests until the next morning. When Chaina sees him, she is shocked to find him outside the crib, covered in ash and soot. She picks him up, confused as to how he managed to escape. Chaina thinks he's been fooling around all night, but the mess in the room makes her hesitate. The floor, fireplace, and carpet are filthy. Chaina wonders if the house was always this chaotic or if something strange happened during the night. She tells Aiel not to touch the ground, but he doesn't care. Quickly, he thinks of a plan and puts the jewel in his mouth. Chaina notices something strange and asks him to spit it out. She squeezes his cheeks, and a diamond falls out. Chaina is surprised and asks where he got that and if it was on the floor. As she takes care of the palace treasury, she checks that nothing is missing. Furthermore, the diamond is not even listed in the records. Then, she hugs Aiel and says that it looks like he wanted to give her the gift. Aiel smiles, feeling that her mother would probably like it too. Later, carriages arrive at the palace, filling the empty storerooms with food and firewood. Thanks to the diamond, they now have 5 years' supply. Lady Rana worries about who could own the jewel, but Chaina assures her that everything is fine, as the castle was abandoned for almost 100 years before Lady Rana took over. Chaina adds that perhaps it will be a blessing for Prince Aiel. Lady Rana is not sure but feels grateful for the resources. Aiel holds onto his mother's dress, thinking she just needs to hold on until he grows up. He dreams of a future where she no longer has to fight to survive. While clinging to her, Lady Rana promises that she will let the king know that she has a son named Aiel. That winter, the fireplace continued to burn, and the palace's finances finally returned to normal. The changes were visible. One day, while Lady Rana was eating, she noticed that there was too much food and asked about the servants. Chaina assured that everything was fine, as Anna, who had left, returned, and the servants were being treated better. But what caught Prince Aiel's attention the most was seeing that his mother no longer looked sad. As he watched her, he thought she was prettier when she smiled. Even though it's the coldest winter ever, it feels warmer to Aiel because things are stable, and her mother is happy. A year passes, and Chaina and Lady Rana are busy deciding what Prince Aiel should wear. They make him try on several outfits before choosing a really elegant one. Aiel can't understand why they're making such a fuss about her clothes. Tired, he lies down on the floor and starts mumbling, surprising his mother and Chaina. Chaina soon realizes that he needs to rest and puts him in his crib. Afterwards, she comments that Prince Aiel will be officially recognized as part of the royal family. Aiel, confused, wonders what she means by acknowledged. Lady Rana is happy that Aiel has grown up without any problems and wonders if the king will show up on his birthday. Chaina reassures her, saying that the king is just waiting for the right moment, as bad things tend to happen to newborns. Aiel overhears the conversation and realizes that all this preparation is for her birthday. Lady Rana says not everyone may enjoy the feast, but it is the perfect opportunity to officially announce that Aiel is of royal blood. She is happy that the rules of the royal family of Arisia also apply to him. Aiel notices how excited her mother is and imagines it's because of the banquet, so he understands that if there is a banquet, the nobles and royalty will be there, and he might finally meet the king. The feast in honor of Prince Aiel begins that night, with a grand feast and extravagant party that clearly cost a fortune. Aiel is enchanted by the lavish decorations, food, and elegant clothes everyone is wearing. Everything seems like a dream to him. Lady Rana picks him up and asks if he is impressed. Aiel thinks this experience is really new for him. Chaina comments that it's probably the first time he's seen so many people in one place. Lady Rana reminds Aiel that he is the star of the night and gives him a kiss on the cheek. Aiel notices the noble's judgmental looks and hears the whispers about him and his mother, but decides not to bother. His focus is on just one thing, meeting his father, King Terrell of Arnesia. Aiel feels a mix of frustration, thinking about how the king never cared about them. He decides that this banquet is the perfect chance to make the king finally notice his presence. The atmosphere changes when the royal family of Arnesia enters, officially starting the banquet. Aiel imagines that this must be the queen and her family. He feels their strong presence as they approach. His eyes are fixed on the queen, on her children, her half-siblings, and especially on the eldest son, who stands out. There is also a girl acting dramatically, as if she lives in a fantasy world. Aiel mentally makes a note that she needs to learn more about each of them, but they pass right by and completely ignore her mother. Lady Rana realizes that all this excitement may be getting to be too much for Aiel, and tries to comfort him. Even though Aiel knows she's probably feeling bad too, she sees how she can still make him laugh, relieving some of the tension. Meanwhile, the crowd is fascinated by the queen's beauty. Ayel notices a sudden change in her mother's expression. She was calm, but now something made her uneasy. He looks around and understands why. The king finally enters the hall, radiating an intimidating energy that makes Ayel freeze for a moment. He can't tell if the king is looking at him or his mother. Ayel thinks it's a shame that he was reborn without the ability to read minds. He imagines how useful it would be to know what everyone is thinking. Soon, people start giving him gifts and congratulating him, acting as if it was something grand to see him there. However, when it is the imperial family's turn, their attitude towards Ayel and her mother becomes clear. They don't hide their true feelings, and this hits Ayel hard. He feels like jumping out of his mother's arms and confronting this woman who dared to treat them like they didn't matter. Looking around, he realizes that everyone there is fake and rotten inside. For a moment, he thinks about shouting and exposing everyone, but he doesn't want to embarrass his mother, so he decides to play along and act politely because that's what they expect from him. Unfortunately, hypocrisy is normal there. All Ayel wants is to leave before falling asleep in her mother's arms. Just as he is about to fall asleep, he notices a young girl nearby. She is probably the daughter of one of the king's concubines. She seems too young for all the drama, but her presence stands out. Fortunately, some of the ladies have already left by the time the banquet finally ends. Ayel and her mother breathe a sigh of relief at the same time. But the night is not over yet. The queen herself approaches them. She makes it clear that getting close to them is not difficult, thanks to her son, the heir to the throne, who is always close by. Ayel can't tell if she's bragging about her son or just trying to provoke them. Either way, it's exactly the kind of attitude he expects from her. The queen goes on to say how sweet Ayel is and how he looks like his mother, but Ayel doesn't believe it. He's sure she has something to do with their difficulties. After all, someone must be responsible for the drastic cuts to the castle's finances. The knights were turned into woodcutters just to collect firewood, and Ayel's clothes appear to have been made from scraps of cloth by the servants. Meanwhile, the queen wishes him a long life and other formalities, but as she leaves, she gives a sarcastic smile, leaving a bad impression. Then something unexpected happens. Lady Rana sees the king himself. He asks if she is getting used to the castle, and she gives a polite but not completely truthful answer, which doesn't surprise Ayel. All he wants is for the king to give them the support they need and act like a real father. Ayel starts crying loudly, which makes the king pay attention and asks to hold him. It is the first time the king has seen Ayel after a year. When he holds it, the king looks a little confused. Most of his children cry incessantly when they see him, but Ayel smiles. Ayel thinks it would be funny if her charming smile left the king speechless. The king seems to start to like him a little, amused that Ayel is not afraid of him. He even talks about raising him in the future, but Ayel isn't interested in keeping quiet. He makes gestures asking the king to put him down. The king thinks Ayel wants to walk, but Lady Rana quickly tells him he can't walk yet, as he is only a year old. However, at that moment, Ayel decides it's time to prove everyone wrong. He takes his first steps right there, knowing he is the center of attention and wanting to show off. The room explodes with excitement as everyone celebrates Ayel's first steps. Even the king seems impressed, realizing that Ayel is trying to show something important, that he is not like the other children. Ayel feels confident, believing this is just the beginning of proving himself. But when he gets to the table and tries to lean on it, he makes a big mistake. The table, along with all the food and drinks, falls and plates and glasses shatter on Ayel. Everyone panics, even the king. But for Ayel, it was all part of her big plan. It wasn't just to show that a one-year-old baby could walk, but to perform his perfectly executed dramatic performance. He falls to the ground, crying as if he is in the middle of an epic tragedy. The king picks him up, checking for injuries. The king sees that Ayel's clothes are soaked in wine, but finds no real damage. He decides that Ayel needs clean clothes. China comes in to help, but the king pushes her away, wanting to do it himself. What he discovers next leaves him speechless. Beneath Ayel's stained clothes are underwear that look more like scraps of cloth than something fit for a prince. China looks confused, saying that she dressed Ayel in new clothes that morning. When the king inspects the clothes, he realizes how miserable and pitiful Ayel's life must be, and the crowd begins to murmur, saying what a shame it is. Frustrated by the whispers, the king demands silence with his voice echoing throughout the room, making everyone immediately silence. He looks at Ayel's mother, clearly processing how they were living so poorly. Meanwhile, Ayel feels relieved. His plan worked perfectly. His clothes may have been ruined, but they told the story he wanted. In fact, that morning, while China was dressing it, Ayel used all her strength to stretch and tear the fabric, making it as tattered as possible. It wasn't difficult, and with a little magic, he added an extra touch of poverty to his outfit, making the statement he wanted. If he was older and stronger, he wouldn't need to use magic, but it worked anyway. The king finally asks Lady Rana to explain how things got to this point, how they could fail so badly to maintain their status. But seeing how distressed she is, he doesn't press for answers. Instead, he turns to one of his officers and asks how the funds are being distributed to the concubines and castles. The king is disappointed, as far as he remembers, he had had given clear orders for the budget to be divided equally. Everything should be working fine. So why, at an event like this, did it feel like they had been forgotten? The king does not understand what is happening and demands the report immediately. Watching all of this, Ael realizes that her father is serious about finding out what happened and is eager to see the numbers in that report. Lady Rana, Ael's mother, tries to calm things down, saying it must be a mistake, and asks for her son back. But Ael knows this is their big chance. As everyone panics and the king's secretary arrives to deliver the documents, the entire room holds its breath, knowing things are about to get heated. When the king looks at the report, he is astonished. He can't believe what he's seeing, so he uses his power to set the papers on fire right there, which surprises Ael. He never imagined his father could be so uninformed about what was going on. It's obvious that everything is the queen's fault. The king calls his queen, demanding to know if she was aware of the situation. The queen tries to remain calm, pretending to be as shocked as everyone else, but the king isn't having it. His intimidating presence grows as he reminds her that managing the budget is entirely her responsibility. Seeing this, the eldest son decides to use his perfect moment to appear and defend his mother. He won't let his mother face this alone and wants to share his own opinion right then and there. The prince tries to explain that this was a big mistake because he is sure his mother wouldn't do something like that. But the king gets even angrier, saying that it doesn't matter as a leader is always responsible for the team's mistakes. And thanks to her negligence, her little brother ended up without food or clothes. The eldest son looks at our hero with those guilty eyes, which makes the situation even more embarrassing. It becomes clear that he is nothing like his father, who is strong and authoritative, or his mother, who is intelligent and cunning. The king turns to the eldest son and asks if he is really saying that his mother had nothing to do with this. Then, without waiting for a response, he tells the queen how disappointed he is in her. Lady Rana, trying to defend the queen, goes on to say that it wasn't her fault, but her own, and that she was the one who was at fault. The king, completely confused, wonders what she is talking about. He says that just being the mother of his child should be enough to prove his place in the family. She looks a little embarrassed, and the king gently touches her hand, reminding her to know her role and act accordingly. This whole scene deeply angers the queen and her son, and the king demands that they find out who is to blame and that this never happens again. The queen, clearly shaken, looks at the ground and promises to resolve the situation and ensure it doesn't happen again. The king gives her a final warning. If she messes up again, she will face punishment. The queen continues to apologize, saying she will find the culprit and make him pay, but she still doesn't understand why he is so angry. She insists that she has no idea how this happened, not knowing how to explain herself to Lady Rana, who is also very stressed. But the hero sees clearly through the queen, while his mother tries to say there was no mistake and defends the queen. Our protagonist can't understand why his mother is protecting the one person who probably knows every little detail of what happened. The queen promises that it won't happen again, but only our hero realizes that at least she could pretend to be guilty. Instead, she just scares everyone with her power. With that, the hero's birthday ends, and somehow, the financial mess is resolved. Later, it is announced that the queen had no hand in resolving the problem. The culprit is quickly found, a family of low-ranking nobles. They are held responsible for everything, and without much ceremony, executed on the spot with a guillotine. The palace servants comment on how the aristocrats even confessed to the crime, but no one can find out where they spent such a large amount of money. Everyone seems relieved, thinking the problem has been resolved, except our baby. He manages to realize that the real mastermind escaped unharmed. The case is closed, but for the hero, this is completely unfair. He makes the decision that when he grows up, he will teach everyone a lesson. But for now, being a baby with a small body, his main focus is food, so his only response is to cry. Soon, he is being fed and feels very happy with the current situation. Still, he knows he needs to work on his body, since he's going to be stuck as a baby for a while. But after thinking about it, he realizes that all he really needs to do is eat and play. After eating, he decides it's time to take a nap. Sometime later, he wakes up to the sound of a carriage arriving at the house. He flies to the window to see what is happening while his nanny sleeps. He sees a group of people leaving, and soon after, 3 of them enter his room: his mother, an adult, and a child. The hero suddenly remembers the nanny. If she wakes up, her powers will be exposed, so he flies back to her and starts pinching her cheeks to wake her up. The adults immediately come in, just in time to see this, and his mother immediately yells at him to stop tormenting the poor babysitter. The nanny notices that another mistress has arrived and greets her immediately. Our hero notices the newcomer too. The new lover quickly says there is no need to apologize as she did not inform anyone about her visit. The hero realizes that it is Philia, another concubine. Everyone starts saying how they would have received her correctly if they had known she was coming, but Philia says she needs to talk to our hero's mother in private. The hero's mother can't understand why Philia wants to see her, but assumes it must be something serious. While waiting for the serious conversation, she ends up choking on her tea. Philia, with a genuinely remorseful look, apologizes apologizes for her behavior at Prince Ael's birthday banquet. She explains about her family. They used to play a big role in winning battles on the continent and were very well known, but those glory days are long behind them. Now, they are experiencing difficulties because no more children have been born into the family lately and their reputation has crumbled. Furthermore, they say they have been in financial difficulties for years. Our hero's mother asks if Philia is here because of her family's problems. Philia admits that they are in large debts and also remembers that she was pressured by the queen, which probably increased the financial problems even further. Philia takes a bag of money and says it's not enough to solve everything, but she's sorry about everything. She admits that our hero's mother probably hates her, as does her family. At that moment, the door opens and Philia's daughter appears silently in the room. It is clear that Philia just wants to protect her daughter so that she does not get involved in conflicts with the imperial family. The lady calmly says that she is fine and doesn't need anything, insisting that Philia is not to blame for any of this. Philia asks them not to criticize her, but the lady says she doesn't feel sorry. She's just being direct. She states that there is no reason for them to turn on each other now. The lady makes it clear that she understands the situation and has no regrets towards Philia's family. She returns the bag of money, saying it would be better to spend it on something good for Philia's daughter. She also understands why Philia's family has been trying to manage the palace's expenses. Then, she releases surprising news, saying she believes that all of this is caused by the fact that she serves the queen. This revelation shocks our hero, and suddenly, everything makes sense to him about why his mother is so hated by others. He starts pacing around the room, thinking about how difficult his mother's life must be. Chaina notices that he is upset and doesn't know how to calm him down. She asks if everything is okay, and he quickly fakes a smile so as not to worry her, knowing he needs to control himself. Chaina thinks he's just being silly and in a bad mood, and goes to exercise with Princess Kanya. While everyone is distracted, our hero decides to discreetly listen to the conversation between his mother and Philia. This time, his mother talks about how she can't escape the queen's oppression. She explains that her main goal is to protect Ael while he is still young and to stop anyone from hurting her family further. His voice is more serious and determined than ever. Lady Rana wants to get closer to Philia, but it's clear she has something more in mind than just being friendly. Philia notices this but respects Rana's determination and agrees. They both think they can count on each other when things get difficult. Meanwhile, Prince Ael is thoughtful, realizing that his mother knows well what really happens between the queen and the concubines, something that involves both him and her, but he also wonders what her next move will be. While Ael is lost in thought, a girl appears near him, and he has no idea how she got there. He silently asks the universe to keep her away, but instead, she jumps into his bed and starts squeezing his cheeks, telling him she thinks he's adorable. She treats him like a squeeze toy, and even starts messing with his crib like it's a game. Our hero wants someone to rescue him from this chaos. Soon, Ael knows there is no longer any way to escape. The nanny says the princess can come visit. Of course, the princess is eager to go there, and Ael realizes that he is alone, with no way out. Time passes quickly, and before he knows it, he is almost 3 years old. Life seems to be moving too fast, and he can't believe how fast he's growing up. Start thinking about how much you still have to learn before you become an adult. He remembers bits and pieces of his past life and wonders if he will ever have the chance to relive something like that. Suddenly, the princess enters her room. She runs to him, but Ael decides to play hide and seek. Unfortunately, she quickly finds him, and he becomes frustrated and upset. But the princess just wants to play. Before Ael could refuse, she was already running around looking for a bigger place to play. They end up outside the palace, and it becomes clear that the princess has been visiting a lot since Philia came with the nanny's help. Ael doesn't mind too much, because it seems like these visits are creating a strong bond. Even though he is small, the girl believes that he is already someone who can be taken care of, but also says that when Ael grows up, it will be his turn to take care of her. The princess makes Ael promise to come as soon as possible, but the little prince can't understand why she is so obsessed with him. Before he can think about it too much, Kanya tells him that she adores him and that playing with him is much more fun than with the others, saying that he is clearly the best choice. Ria laughs, thinking she'll probably regret saying that when she grows up. Kanya picks him up immediately. Saying it's time to play, Kanya insists on carrying Ael to the agreed location. The problem is that Ael feels like he's going to suffocate with her excessive help. He silently asks for help, and at that moment, a maid enters, saying that Ael must be uncomfortable being carried like this. She scolds Kanya, saying that even though she is a princess, she shouldn't carry heavy things since she is still a child. Ael feels great relief, was finally saved. Although Kanya is not happy at all, she shouts that she wants to play. The maid suggests that she try to draw or listen to something classical, but Kanya is tired of these boring things. things. She says she wants to wield a sword, just like her brother Kyle. AL notices that she is practicing with a stick and soon realizes that her balance is completely off. The weight of the staff is wrong and she is not holding it correctly. But even so, Kanya is totally immersed, imagining that she has already defeated some powerful swordmaster and achieving victory for herself. The maid tries to explain why Kanya can't train like Kyle and Lennon, which really makes the princess angry as she doesn't understand why they can and she can't. The maid says that it is not appropriate for a princess to get her hands dirty, reminding Kanya that she must be elegant and well-behaved. Kanya doesn't listen. In a very Mulan style, she has already taken the maid's sword and before she can stop her, begins talking excitedly about swordsmanship. The maid panics and runs after her, asking to return the sword or at least take just the scabbard. Aiel watches closely and starts to like Kanya more and more. In time, Prince Aiel turns 5 years old. He's in the fields of his land, looking all regal and brave, pretending he's running around on his imposing horse. But really, he's just rocking back and forth on a toy horse, having the time of his life. China, his maid and horse trainer, says he should try riding a real horse, but Aiel rejects it, saying it's too risky. China tries to cheer him up, saying that a prince his age should like things like riding horses and wielding swords. But Aiel responds that he doesn't need to do that. This leaves China disheartened because he doesn't seem to be showing much ambition. Here's the lowdown. Aiel is no ordinary child. This is his first life. Yes, he has been through many lives, more than he can count. And throughout all these lives, he learned a hard lesson. Being good at something only brings problems. Every time he was a professional at something like swordsmanship or magic, he attracted the wrong people who wanted to use or destroy him. So now he just wants to keep to himself and enjoy the perks of being a prince without putting in the effort. Back at the castle, Aiel tells Chena that he needs some alone time, and she agrees, although she's not excited about it at all. As soon as she leaves, he closes the door, lies down, and stays there, doing nothing. Later, they end up in a difficult situation. China is frustrated, asking why he hates studying so much, pointing out that a 5-year-old prince should be eager to learn and grow. But Aiel is totally disinterested, doesn't care about the world, and definitely doesn't like memorizing knowledge. Chena sighs, half-jokingly saying that he looks like someone who has lived 100 lives. Before she can continue, Aiel stops her and assures her that it's not her fault that he's like this. Deep down, he decides it's time to just enjoy life with a "you only live once" vibe. For him, it took 100 lifetimes to learn to relax and enjoy. Maybe he's just a chill guy, who knows? Chena reminds Prince Aiel that according to royal rules, he needs to start studying now that he is 5 years old. She takes out some very simple books, chosen especially for him, but Aiel, looking like she's in a bad mood, takes one and starts spinning it as if it were a toy. China is completely irritated, saying that books are for reading, not spinning. She even tries to engage in emotional blackmail, saying that ordinary people would love to learn, but don't have the chance. But Aiel doesn't mind at all. He starts stacking the books to make a little house. China, trying to control herself, tells him to stop and sit down, but Aiel isn't listening. When words don't work, he goes into dramatic mode, complaining and shouting that he won't study. Suddenly, the door opens and his mother walks in, looking like she can't take it anymore. And let's be honest, nothing gets spoiled faster than a mother's "I'm going to kill you" look. Under his watch, Aiel is forcibly taken to the library and begins studying, despite complaining. Even though he's pretending to study, Aiel is thinking how ridiculous this all is. He knows that if his parents really cared about him learning, they would make sure he was protected. But in his world, being good at anything only brings trouble. The more talent a child like him demonstrates, the more dangerous life becomes for him and everyone around him. Aiel thinks this is unfair, but life is what it is. All he wants is a peaceful life where no one is at risk. While he is lost in his thoughts, Chena wakes him up to reality, telling him to study properly. Aiel thinks about what China says, but decides it's too much for him. China doesn't give up, saying that if he continues acting like this, his mother will be sad. It hits him, and Aiel finally decides to try hard. Not because he suddenly loves studying, but because of his mother. Still, he is firm on one thing: no sword training, no magic lessons. He's had enough of dealing with the chaos of being talented. Instead, you start thinking about other, less risky plans for your future. A few days later, a fancy carriage arrives at the concubine's house. China tells Aiel that a wizard from the Tower of Magic came to check her mana. If he has talent, they will start teaching him magic. This is bad news for Aiel. He knows that any decent mage would sense the enormous amount of mana he is hiding. He thinks the only way out is to keep his mana well guarded. As he walks down the hallway to meet his tester, he keeps his head down, trying to look as ordinary as possible. China tries to cheer him up, saying that even if his mana isn't super impressive, he can still work on improving it. When they open the door, the tester's expression says it all. He's shocked, as if he's seen something he wasn't prepared to see. The wizard quickly stands up and looks directly at Prince Ael, while they both watch each other. Ael watches the mana flowing through the mage, wondering what it must look like in the mage's eyes. The wizard takes Ael's arm to check her vitals, and says something seems strange. China, trying to cheer him up, asks if Ael is special, but the wizard doesn't know whether to call him special or just strange, since he can't feel any mana in Ael, not even after trying to probe him with his mana. The wizard finds nothing, leaving China completely surprised. Ael leans back in his chair, feeling reassured by how he's hiding his mana, like one last secret weapon. Before entering the room, he used his chi to compress his mana and push it to the ends of his body. When the wizard was surprised, Ael knew his plan was working. The idea of someone of royal lineage having no mana made no sense, and Ael had completely confused him. The wizard tells Lady Rana that Ael has no potential for magic, leaving her confused. He adds that even commoners have some mana, but Ael appears to have none. This gives the impression that Ael overdid it a bit. Lady Rana appears devastated, realizing that her son may not have what it takes to become a wizard, but that is exactly what Ael wants. He's playing the long game, making everyone think he's completely useless when it comes to mana. While he pretends to be upset, he knows this is just the beginning of his act. The next day, Ael meets her new fencing coach, a young knight named Landfill Tagon. Ael takes one look at him and silently judges him as boring and weak, not even close to her level. In his past life, Ael fought monsters and survived brutal battles, so this guy doesn't impress him. Even so, Ael decides to play along, agreeing to train and encouraging the two to get stronger together, even if she doesn't wait long. Ael secretly thinks that all this training is more for Landfill's good than her own. He's definitely not interested in doing something too difficult, like his sister Kanya, who has been using weights to get stronger. Landfill explains that intense training like this is a Kenchester family tradition, but Ael says it seems more like something martial artists do than nobles. When Ael asks about the plan, the swordsman explains that swordsmanship is not just about strength, but also about balance and flexibility. To prove his point about flexibility, Landfill does some impressive sword moves and suggests starting with simple exercises like balancing on logs. Ael immediately complains about being afraid of falling, even though the logs barely touch the ground, but Landfill assures her that even if she falls, it won't hurt. Ael then asks what he should do, since he is afraid of heights. Then they begin flexibility training, and Landfill assumes that Ael would have no problem since he is still a child. But Ael surprises him, struggling to even touch his feet. The swordsman doesn't give up. He decides it's time to train with wooden swords and explains how to use centrifugal force to strike correctly. Ael tries, but his grip is so bad that the sword goes flying. Landfill is stunned to see Ael completely getting the exercise wrong. Ael, pretending to be devastated, tells Landfill that he is a lost cause in swordsmanship, but Landfill encourages him, saying that it is just the first attempt and that he will improve with practice, handing him another sword. They continue the session, and the entire time, Ael is well aware that someone is watching him. His clumsy performance is part of his plan to spread rumors about how bad he is, ensuring the news reaches the ears of the city's nobles. Prince Ael is said to be in a worse situation than the commoners when it comes to mana. He hasn't been able to pass any kind of training and is so clumsy that he could trip over anything. Although some find it funny, it doesn't help Ael's reputation at all. At the concubine's castle, Ael is relaxing with cookies and orange juice, a surprising combination from medieval times, when he learns that a new private tutor is arriving to teach him. Rumors about him being useless have driven away most of the tutors, so Ael is curious to know who would be brave or crazy enough to take the job. He looks out the window and sees the tutor getting out of a carriage. A few minutes later, he discovers that the tutor's name is Gamel Para. The mood in the room is immediately uncomfortable, with Gamel having to teach someone who everyone thinks is hopeless, while Ael is already bored. Ael sighs and thinks they could start with literature, focusing on foreign and common languages. Gamel places several books in front of him and says that basic grammar should only take a day to learn, but since Ael's reputation is so bad, Gamel decides to give him a few days, acting as if it's not a big problem if he can't learn. This angers Ael, who promises to do his best. Gamel goes on to say that low grades don't always mean someone isn't trying. Sometimes it's just how the brain works. Basically, he says it's not Ael's fault, but disguised praise is worse than direct criticism. Ael begins to feel the weight of people looking at him negatively. Of course, he wanted everyone to stop expecting so much from him, but he didn't expect their pity to hurt so much. At night, Ael sneaks to the library, feeling proud of his top-level language skills, thanks to the hundreds of past lives in which he has been fluent in multiple languages since he was a child. As he walks through the library, he wonders if he should let everyone know how much of a genius he really is. He focuses mana in his hands and begins looking for books on vocabulary and grammar, using magic to grab them from the shelves as he passes by since he is too low to reach. But he doesn't stop there. He picks up books in foreign languages too, trying to learn even more than he already knows. With everything organized on a table, he starts studying, thinking that all languages follow the same basic rules. He has lived many lives, and in all of them he has been busy learning this. That night, he studies with great determination, just to show how smart he is. A few days later, Gamel says his jokes went too far, and asks if AL really understands the common language. AL sighs and says she's not lying, trying to prove it by reading something. Gamel thinks he must have only memorized a few passages, but AL says that even memorizing an entire language would be impressive, considering how difficult the kingdom's official language is. Gamel challenges AL to pick up a random book and read it, pointing out that even the smartest children need to be at least 12 to read the basics, and AL is only 5. AL immediately picks up a book and reads it perfectly, leaving Gamel completely shocked. Gamel is so impressed that he begins to cry, calling AL's talent extraordinary. After all, when a student stands out, the teacher looks good too. AL tells his tutor that he should feel lucky to have a genius as a student. Excited, Gamel begins the day's class, ready to teach his brilliant pupil. The following night, rumors about AL take a surprising turn. Where they once mocked him for being clumsy and useless with a sword, now everyone is excited about the fact that he has mastered the common language in just 2 days. Rumors begin to spread that AL solves math problems in his head as if it were nothing, and thus the legend of the genius AL is born. But where do these stories come from? It turns out that at a local tavern, someone has been spreading the rumors, or rather, the beer. Gamel, AL's tutor, is there, a little drunk, bragging to anyone who will listen about how he always saw the prince's potential, even when everyone else didn't. He goes on and on about how hidden talents just need the right teacher, namely him, to shine. Soon, news about AL's intelligence reaches the king. The king is impressed and talks to Lady Rana about how her son may have had difficulty with the sword and magic because it simply wasn't his thing. Lady Rana apologizes for causing concern, but thinks that as a mother, she should have realized how special he was earlier. The king, seeing her concern, reassures her, and they share one of those emotional, sophisticated moments that would make the queen need eye sanitizer. He tells her he's sure their son will grow up to do amazing things. Meanwhile, our boy is there, listening to the conversation, thinking to himself that he will do enough to keep the king impressed, choose a good place in life, and have fun in the meantime. AL begins his 101st life as a very intelligent prince. A few days later, he notices that there are more guards near the concubine's castle. It doesn't take long for him to realize that since he can't fight or use magic, the king probably sent them to keep him safe. AL feels a little proud, thinking the king must be in a good mood. Then, a loud noise behind him catches his attention. Chaina left a huge chest, and her mother explains that it is a gift from the king. AL quickly opens the chest and finds it full of gold coins, shiny jewels, and all kinds of treasures. As he examines it, something catches his eye, a unique necklace. Chaina asks if it's the most expensive item in the trunk, but AL decides it's not about the price, but that necklace is the coolest of all. He puts on the necklace and says it makes you smarter, thinks faster, and keeps you from getting tired. Chaina is super impressed, thinking it's because of AL's studies, but he makes it seem like it's no big deal. The truth is that while the necklace seems simple to others, AL can see the magical device hidden inside the jewel. He doesn't need it, but his internal energy does much more when he uses the necklace. AL starts thinking about Kia, who is training a lot for the sword and has become very muscular. He asks his mother if he can give the necklace to Kia, and she strokes his head, saying that since it's a gift from the king, he would probably be happy. She asks AL what he likes about Kia, and he says it's her strength, which makes the maids laugh a lot. The next day, everyone in the concubine's castle is happy, knowing that AL has not only been recognized, but also favored by the king. The young knight even brags about this to the guards, reminding them to be proud to be part of the concubine's castle. A few days later, AL is in the dining room with Chaina. She shows him the sweets he ordered and asks what he thinks. AL tries them one by one but doesn't like any of them. He is angry and keeps looking for something better. Chaina asks him to slow down and enjoy the sweets, asking if they taste good. AL, frustrated, says none are sweet enough because they lack what he's looking for. Chaina, confused, says that these sweets were made by the best chefs and offers to bring something better. Then AL has an idea. He doesn't need a chef, but an alchemist. Chaina is surprised and confused. AL starts to get distracted, thinking about Coca-Cola and snacks from her previous life, almost salivating just imagining the taste. He thinks he'll need an alchemist to recreate Coca-Cola, but he knows it won't be easy. Chaina, totally confused as to why he wants an alchemist, asks what's going on. AL realizes that she must have heard him dreaming out loud. He thinks about explaining, but decides it would be too awkward, especially since he's only 5 years old. Then, he begins to realize that the kingdom doesn't have the spices or techniques needed to make something like Coca-Cola. The more you think about it, the more you realize it will be difficult. Making Coca-Cola isn't just mixing things, it's a process with several extra steps that he doesn't yet yet know how to do. Feeling discouraged, he starts dreaming about the sweet, carbonated drink again, but suddenly he remembers that he's a genius and that if anyone can solve this, it's him. Suddenly, he gets up and runs out of the room. Chaina looks at him, completely unaware, and asks where he's going. Aiel shouts back that she is going to study, leaving her even more confused. Aiel, in turn, runs around the castle, focused on one thing: chemistry. He knows that cooking and chemistry are related, so he believes that alchemy is the key to discovering the formula for Coca-Cola, no matter how difficult it is. 3 years later, now 8 years old, Aiel is presiding over a meeting in front of a large table. They're talking about building new bridges in areas with a lot of merchant traffic. One of the supervisors asks him what he thinks of the plans. Aiel looks at the designs, compliments how impressive they are, and casually asks who designed them. When the supervisor proudly says it was him, Aiel changes his expression. He threatens to fire the man if he comes up with another useless design. The room is silent. Aiel points out some problems with the bridge's design, saying that while it works now, it will be a disaster when snow accumulates in the winter. The weight will crush the wooden parts underneath because the designers cared more about appearance than safety. Aiel makes it clear that while the kingdom must be impressive, safety comes first. He demands that they redo the design and then moves on to the next project with all his vast knowledge. Aiel's work is getting heavier and heavier. The so-called experts in the room don't even come close to him, but they decided to trust this 8-year-old genius anyway. Aiel feels a little bad for them, but knows she has no choice. He needs to keep proving himself. After the meeting, as Aiel is leaving, a new maid sees him and calls him by his last nickname, the Gray Young Sage. He is horrified and thinks it is the most ridiculous nickname ever. Realizing she must be new, he asks her not to use that nickname again because he can't stand it. She promises to remember. But as he walks away, she almost ends up saying the nickname again. Aiel, now even angrier, swears that this nickname is the silliest he has ever heard. As her carriage drives away, Mrs. Refin looks out the window and asks Chayana if Aiel is going somewhere important. Chayana responds that he is going to see the king, which makes her wonder what they are going to talk about. Chayana hesitates, almost saying that Aiel is interested in learning alchemy. Meanwhile, inside the carriage, Aiel imagines how the king might react when he suddenly asks to learn alchemy. Even though his request was approved immediately, Aiel thinks the king should trust him now, especially since he has taken on so many responsibilities as a professional. Prince Aiel looks out the window, trying to shake off his nerves. Even after having lived many lives, the king's aura still makes him nervous. He reminds himself to calm down and not make mistakes when it's time to speak. When the king asks why he wants to learn alchemy, Aiel explains that it is because he wants to help the kingdom and the king more, as he is not good with swords or magic. All he can do is acquire knowledge and use it. The king listens attentively, impressed by Aiel's thinking, and agrees to the request. He promises to connect Aiel with trusted alchemists and even asks if there is anything else he needs. Aiel politely says she will ask if she needs anything else. The king smiles warmly, and Aiel feels at ease, knowing that her plan worked. Word spreads quickly, and soon the kingdom's best alchemists appear, eager to prove themselves and perhaps gain some recognition. It's no surprise when alchemist Demon Ranchet is chosen. He is known for creating crazy reflective mirrors that reflect sunlight far away, which he installed in the western fortress to keep invaders at bay. A few days later, Aiel meets Demon in the garden of the concubine's castle. Demon gives a casual compliment to the garden, but Aiel is more focused on him. Based on his legendary reputation, Aiel expected an older, wiser alchemist, but Demon appears surprisingly young. Noticing Aiel's confusion, Demon explains that her hair turned white years ago after an accident involving toxic fumes. Aiel realizes that Demon almost lost his life while learning. Demon, remaining calm, warns Aiel to be prepared for the risks. If anything happens to Aiel during the experiments, Demon knows he will be responsible, perhaps even with his own life or worse. Demon explains that alchemy is much more difficult and dangerous than Aiel probably realizes. He even comments on Aiel's youth, but before he can finish, Aiel interrupts him. He says he knows what he's doing. Alchemy is not magic, it is science, and he is not after silly dreams, like turning rocks into marshmallows or performing miracles. What he really wants are practical methods for cleaning iron ores and creating stronger metals for the kingdom. Demon is impressed by Aiel's ambition and reasoning. He feels that this boy is destined to lead the kingdom of Arnesia one day. Inspired by Aiel's speech, Demon kneels before him and says that although his abilities are limited, he will teach everything he knows. A few days pass, and alchemy classes begin. Prince Aiel is immersed in his studies when Demon asks if he has ever done anything related to alchemy before. Aiel is surprised, thinking that perhaps he showed off too much, but quickly changes the subject, saying that he read about it in a book. Demon seems cool with this and even says that Aiel lives up to the rumors he heard. Aiel feels relieved that his act of genius this is working. The two end up working hard all day, every day, from dawn until dusk, as they delve deeper into their research. IL discovers that it is possible to harden iron by throwing eggshells or bone ash. He shares this discovery with Demon, and they continue to make progress. Later, AL learns how to extract lead and other substances. He also realizes that, aside from some special metals and medicines, in this world, everything else is pretty much the same as he remembers from his past lives. He talks about how good it is that the rules haven't changed. Demon overhears and asks what he meant, but AL says he was just thinking out loud. With everything going according to plan, AL sends a letter to the king asking for more alchemists. The king wastes no time and agrees, telling his men to gather the best alchemists in the kingdom. But there's a small problem. One of the king's advisors hesitates a little, worried about the complaints about the budget, but the king immediately interrupts, saying that he trusts that AL's work will be good and worthwhile for the kingdom. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom, AL says he is going to create a carbonated drink, a soda. The alchemists are surprised and ask if he is really planning to make food. Our friend happily responds that that's exactly what he's doing. He begins to explain some basic concepts, but before he can delve too deeply, the alchemists begin to feel disappointed. They came expecting to do great things and bring honor to their families, but they end up having snacks. An alchemist still complains about having left his comfortable and great teaching position at the Alchemy Academy to become a cook's apprentice. To calm them down, our friend promises that everyone will be paid well no matter how things turn out. This works, and the alchemists begin to exchange ideas. First, they realize that they need carbonated water, which naturally exists in some parts of the kingdom and can be brought quickly. Our friend realizes that these guys aren't exactly motivated by passion, they're just happy to get paid or gain fame. Still, he knows they will be useful in speeding up his research. A few days later, carts loaded with barrels of carbonated water arrived from all over, making our friend very happy. Demon opens one of the barrels, but the bad smell makes him squirm as he asks if they should really drink it. AL says they need to test if it's drinkable, but after checking the first keg, he almost throws up and decides it's a no. Water is a complete failure. He checks the other barrels, and yes, they are all horrible. But our friend doesn't lose his cool. He tells everyone that they will have to make artificially carbonated water, which creates a buzz among the alchemists. He hands out papers with some theories, saying they could solve the problem if they investigated these clues. Seeing how serious this is, IL reassures them, saying that they are the best alchemists in the kingdom and will discover the solution in no time. When he asks Demon for help, his response isn't exactly enthusiastic. These alchemists really are the best brains in Aresia. Feeling confident, AL leaves the room, saying that tinkering with theories and testing things must be their happy place, so he won't be watching. Still, he wonders if they can do it in just 1 week, but he thinks the challenge will make them work faster. A few days later, IL is really excited to tell the alchemists that the carbonated water will bring energy to the king and will also generate money. The alchemists aren't so sure about this, secretly wondering if it's just silly hype, but AL is very surprised when she sees that they've already managed to make artificial carbonated water. Our friend grabs a container and is ready to taste it himself. Demon and the others are curious to see if this will really catch on. The water has a strong taste but no flavor, so they are skeptical. AL quickly explains that it is not meant to be drunk straight, that they will mix it with fruit juice or alcohol. His original dream was to recreate Coca-Cola, but since he couldn't get the Coke fruit, this carbonated alternative will have to act as a substitute. To start, IL squeezes some lemon juice into sparkling water and takes a small sip. The taste is perfect, like right for the situation. With so much excitement, he passes it on to others, and as expected, the alchemists love it. The tart lemon flavor, mixed with the effervescence, is a total hit, leaving everyone wanting more, and so AL's soda was born. Word about the drink spreads like wildfire, turning it into a luxury so desired that people can't get enough of it, even outside the borders of Aresia. Lord Dement, the Earl of the Northern Territories, can't understand this soda thing that Prince AL created. He has to confer with his servant, who confirms that this is all thanks to AL's leadership. The drink has become a luxury item and is generating a lot of money for the Kingdom of Aresia. There are even wild rumors about carriages full of gold appearing at the concubine's palace every day. He regrets ignoring IL on his first birthday and thinking the prince was useless. Lord Dement is full of regret. If he had supported AL at the time, he could have profited from the action. Vowing to never miss an opportunity again, he promises to be more attentive to everything. Fast forward 2 years, in the concubine's castle, 16-year-old Princess Kanya is showing off her sword moves. After finishing her routine, she nervously asks 10-year-old Prince IL what he thought. IL, pausing, says she looks super cool and impressive. Her escort also appears, saying that her sword skills are impeccable. IL agrees, thinking that she is much more skilled than any boy her age. Kanya is very happy, jumping and thanking him for the kind words. Watching her jump with happiness, her escort says they want to take a break, and AL thinks she looks really cute with all the excitement. After training, Kanya and IL sit in the garden to drink tea. Kanya mentions all the news about the success of Ael's soda, it is said that it not only helped the palace, but also boosted the kingdom's economy. Ael, trying to remain calm, calls it his obligation as a prince. Kanya then tells him a rumor about him being the perfect son, which apparently made many people jealous, especially Lady Rana. However, there is more to this story than Ael's fame. After discovering that her mother, Rana, comes from a fallen noble family that used to run a small territory and has been living like ordinary people, Ael decides to hand over the soda distribution to her family. This turns out to be a genius move, as people are not just buying a bottle or two, but are lining up to get cases of soda. Demand is as high as a milkshake. Some people are so desperate for the product that they pay double or even triple the price to get it. In addition to soda, Ael also introduces yogurt and another drink on the market, and both become a huge success. Thanks to this, Lady Rana's family goes from an ordinary life to being richer than any merchant in the kingdom. Their house is so full of gold and decorations that it is almost blinding to anyone trying to pass by. Rumors spread quickly, and soon people begin comparing Ael's successes to Princess Kanya's efforts. This makes Kanya super frustrated and upset. She gets so angry that she ends up in tears, asking Ael to tone it down a little. Ael just laughs, not thinking it's a big deal, and tries to change the subject, offering her soda and waffles covered in her syrup, saying he can spoil her with the candy. But Kanya is not interested in snacks. Instead, she draws her sword and tells him exactly what she thinks of his problem. She asks what's the point of so much money if he doesn't even know how to fight, and points the sword at him, saying she's going to teach him how to handle a blade. Ael, clearly unimpressed, thanks him, but says he has no interest in being a swordsman in this life. He remembers his past, when he once lived the life of a warrior, but Kanya isn't about to let him get away so easily. She immediately launches a surprise attack, showing him some sword techniques while pressuring him to fight back. Ael sighs, realizing it will be quicker to just go with her. He thinks that if he plays along, he can help Kanya achieve her dream of raising a family full of swordmasters. Despite appearing very delicate, Kanya has a lot of energy and passion, and Ael decides to use her energy little by little, brick by brick, deciding to help her achieve her goal. A few days later, Ael finds herself traveling in a huge carriage on her way to see the king. He admires the size of the carriage, mentally joking that it's like riding in a Lamborghini. The attention he receives from people makes him feel like a celebrity. Lying down and relaxing, Ael wonders what the king wants to talk about this time. He suspects it might be about a bonus or some raise as a reward for his achievements. When he arrives, Ael joins the king for lunch, curious about what comes next. He remembers how silence used to make him uncomfortable, but now he's used to it. Sitting alone, he eats calmly, waiting for the king to speak. Lately, he has been visiting the king more often. When Ael is about to bite into a cookie, he almost chokes when the king asks if he has ever thought about taking a government position. After clearing his throat, Ael realizes that the moment he has been avoiding has finally arrived. The king says it may seem early, but no one would object if Ael started working in the government. He then asks Ael what he thinks about it, and if there is a specific position he would like. Trying to maintain his composure, Ael says he has no preference, although deep down all he really wants is to relax, eat, and enjoy life. He drinks his tea, hoping not to ruin everything, and tells the king that he sees no reason to think about work now, especially since he is still busy with science and alchemy. Keeping her expression calm, Ael waits while the king remains silent. In his mind, Ael wonders why the king wants him to take on a role when the first prince is not yet involved in the government. He thinks about the queen and the first prince, who remained silent, and how he was always careful not to overstep boundaries with them. He also feels that the last grand ball was cancelled because of the chaos caused by the eccentric prince. Ael knows that being liked by the king is one thing, but being trusted with a big government job is something else entirely. He doesn't like gossip and doesn't want to get involved in any drama with his siblings. Is the king trying to cause problems between them on purpose? Ael feels that this might be the situation. He thinks about how survival isn't just about being smart or strong in the wild, but also applies to real life. To sit on the throne, you need strength. Ael has the vision and keen instincts of an eagle, but even with all the knowledge from his past lives, he knows it wouldn't be enough to keep him safe. Perhaps the king wants a world where only the strongest survive. Either way, Ael won't fall into the trap this time. A few days have passed since Ael's conversation with the king. Now he is riding on a horse, excited, thinking that this is the first time he has gone so far from the concubine palace, and this time it is not on a toy horse, it is on the real horse. The wind hits his face and he feels free like never before. He thinks he deserves this breath of fresh air after working and staying indoors for so long. Remember the times when you used to explore everything, even crossing worlds just to find strong people to challenge. But today, he's happy just enjoying the ride. Then, Kanya calls him, asking him to slow down, impressed with the way he rides the horse. In his head, he thanks her for taking him, but out loud he says it's all the horse's credit, not his. He looks back, wondering why so many knights are escorting them on such a short trip. Notice that some seem very strong. Kanya says she didn't ask for so many guards, but before she finishes speaking, Ael interrupts, reminding her that being a princess, safety has to come first, even if it means losing some freedom. Suddenly, Ael feels something strange coming from in front, a heavy and strange energy. He stops the horse and wonders if it's some kind of magic. His sister asks why he stopped, and he says they should go back as he thinks they might encounter monsters in the forest. Kanya is confused and asks how he knows that. Ael makes up a silly excuse about having a strong sixth sense and says it feels bad, as if a trap is waiting for them. Kanya, of course, doesn't believe it and immediately moves towards the strange energy. Ael shouts for the knights to make sure she returns safely. One of the knights uncomfortably admits that they are on the right path, as beyond the forest lies the princess's training ground. Ael is confused and asks about the training camp, but in the end he follows his sister, who seems completely sure of where she is going. This all started a few days ago when Kanya and Ael were together, eating without any danger. Kanya talked about a trip and invited him to go along. She understands how boring it is to be stuck in the palace all the time and talks about how she loves hunting and going on adventures. As they ride side by side, Kanya says that traveling is practical and practical is traveling. Everything is fun for her. Ael, on the other hand, feels this is more of a punishment than anything else. Kanya looks at him and says she's sure he would have gone along even if it was just to practice, because he trusts her. And as she is his sister, she promises to protect him if they encounter monsters. Ael doesn't say much, just smiles, thinking how amazing she is. Soon, they arrive at the training field. Ael goes into planning mode, organizing the strategy. Some soldiers will take the monsters to one side, Kanya will cross, and the rest of the team will take care of the monsters caught in the trap. The goal is to make good use of time and energy while Kanya shows off her skills. The mission begins, and the guards capture 20 orcs for Kanya to fight. She grabs her sword, runs towards them, and takes down the first orc with a blow to the neck. With a quick strike, he sends another orc flying. Ael watches, doubting that she could take one down on the first try, but as he continues watching, he has to admit that she has serious skills. He's a little jealous, of course, and rightfully so, but mostly impressed by her strength and calmness as she fights. Kanya doesn't stop. He goes from one orc to another, increasing his number of victories. Kanya's skills get everyone excited, watching her do incredible moves for a 16-year-old girl. The training continues for a few days, and she continues to show how talented she is. One night, they are relaxing by the fireplace. Ael asks if she is tired, but Kanya responds that she is fine, and even says that she wishes she had fought more. Ael warns her not to try so hard, remembering that people make mistakes when they let their guard down. He even mentions a mistake from his past life that cost him dearly. As they relax, Kanya is praising how delicious the meat on the skewer is. Ael watches her and thinks how, at that moment, she just seemed like an ordinary 16-year-old girl. But as the night goes on, he suddenly asks her why she wants to be so strong. Kanya is surprised, but responds seriously. She says that no matter how skilled she is, no one will really support her choices as she is a princess. People think that this is just a phase, and that one day she will abandon all this with a sword and settle down, and marry some random man for political reasons. Ael understands in their world, it's completely normal for princesses to have arranged marriages because of wedding rings. Kanya is already at the age where people expect this, but before Ael can say anything, Kanya interrupts him. She says she hates this kind of life. Ael is surprised, but she explains how much she admires him. He's doing what he knows, earning respect and money while helping the kingdom. She wants the same thing. She wants people to see her abilities, not just as someone who is getting married for politics. With a determined look, Kanya says that she will control her own life. Ael smiles, impressed, and says confidently that she will certainly change his destiny. The girl smiles back, saying she wants to be like him. Then, she remembers that their journey ends tomorrow. Ael agrees, saying that this trip was amazing. The next day, Kanya is still there, defeating orcs as if it were a personal vendetta. When an orc runs towards him, Kanya wastes no time and slashes him at once, causing him to fall instantly. Everyone watching is amazed. She continues hunting orcs, even on her way home, as if in an unbeatable rage. Orcs that try to hide don't stand a chance and are easily caught. Ael eventually yells at her, saying it's time to stop. He points out that there is nothing left to fight for and that they need to go home. Kanya looks around and sees that she is surrounded by a pile of defeated orcs, so she finally agrees to stop. But then she realizes that her horse is in terrible shape, completely exhausted from so much action and in urgent need of rest. Ael says they should ride his horse together while her horse is sent to the wizards to do something magical. The girl climbs up and takes the reins, since, let's be honest, she's the better rider, and Ael is completely on board. They begin to head home, with the guards following closely behind. Everything seems fine at first, but of course it doesn't last. AL feels something is wrong and looks up at the sky. Kanya asks what's wrong, but he can't explain. He just feels like something bad is going to happen. He focuses his energy on trying to figure out what's going on, and then he sees it, a wyvern. AL panics and quickly grabs the horse, telling Kanya to hold on tight. He's ready to run away. He turns to the guards behind them, shouts warning them about the wyvern and telling them to hide in the forest. The guards don't believe it and think it's nonsense. They chose this place because the local lord, who loves hunting wyverns, swore there were none there, but things quickly start to go wrong. Someone raises the alarm and suddenly a huge wyvern dives down, picks up a guard like a toy, and flies away with him. Everyone panics, screaming and running everywhere, completely shocked to see the monster they thought didn't exist there. Prince Aiel remains calm and takes command, while Princess Kanya looks back nervously to see what is happening. That's when she realizes it's not just one wyvern, there are several. Aiel sees it too and is completely confused, as wyverns are normally solitary, but now they are acting like an organized death squad. These creatures are not just hunting, they are destroying everyone for fun. What really baffles him is that they are using insane magic like acid breath, making them even more dangerous. Behind Aiel and Kanya, the scene is total chaos. The ground feels like a battlefield where hope has been buried. Kanya watches the guards being defeated, but Aiel tells her to focus and hold on to him tighter. At that moment, one of the wyverns targets them and begins to chase them, preparing its acid breath to attack. Suddenly, a wizard appears and saves the day, destroying the wyvern's attack with a fireball. The group of mages behind them join the fight, casting spells to clear the way. But Aiel knows the truth. They can't run forever. The fight is not over yet. Wyverns are difficult to defeat unless one has real magical abilities. Anything below level 4 would be like throwing rocks at them. The mages are trying their best, but it's clear they're close to reaching their limit, with 2 wyverns quickly approaching. Aiel wastes no time, converts her mana into a deadly projectile called a spirit bullet or Gedong sniper, and hits a wyvern right in the head. Afterwards, he defeats the other without difficulty, leaving the mages to gloat as if they had done all the work. But out of nowhere, a wyvern falls in front of them, blocking their escape route. When the situation turns ugly, Kanya screams for her mother in complete panic. His personal guard appears at just the right moment, cutting the wyvern in half with a single sword strike. The guard doesn't stay to celebrate. She tells Aiel and Kanya to run as quickly as possible. In the woods for safety, Aiel feels relief and is impressed by her abilities, hoping this will give them some breathing room. But before he can relax, he hears a strange voice in his head, almost mocking him. Aiel quickly looks around, trying to figure out where that strange vibration is coming from. Then a man in a dark cloak appears, holding a strange staff and laughing as if preparing for a villainous role. Aiel's instincts scream that there is danger. Well, obviously, as soon as he tries to analyze the man, the wizard dispenses with introductions and starts casting magic, as if he's about to attack. This catches Aiel by surprise, as he was expecting a response, not for the wizard to pull out a power and start firing. The dark mage launches his attack, but Aiel is quick, dodging and protecting Kanya. Unfortunately, the guards behind them aren't as lucky. When the magic stops, Aiel looks back and sees the guards down, with smoke coming from the lifeless bodies. The dark wizard comments, surprised, on how Kanya managed to dodge the attack. Aiel is surprised to realize that the wizard knows her name and begins to wonder if she has been the target all along. With a macabre laugh, the wizard jokes, saying that they were just entertainment for him. He raises his staff, preparing to cast another spell, and states that they cannot escape. Aiel feels a dark energy coming from the staff, and both he and Kanya feel uncomfortable. Kanya looks around and notices something strange happening to the bodies of the fallen guards. One of the guards shouts that they are moving, and even the wyvern starts to move. Aiel realizes that they are facing the undead. The dark wizard orders the undead to eliminate Kanya and show the royal family the power of the dark church, but then he pauses, sensing something is wrong, although he doesn't know exactly what it is. Aiel will not stand by while her sister is in danger. Determined, he wonders who would have the audacity to attack Kanya. Using his power, he shoots at the wizard's chest, hitting him with a wave of attacks that make the wizard scream and fall. Kanya, confused, asks what happened, and Aiel explains that the wizard probably overloaded himself with magic, causing a reaction. Even with the dark wizard fallen, the spell on the undead is still active. The guards ask Aiel and Kanya to flee, promising to take care of the undead before leaving. Aiel tells the guards that she trusts them to finish the fight. When night falls, they flee into the forest and find shelter under a cliff, setting up camp. Kanya is still worried, but Aiel reassures her, saying that the undead will soon disappear now that the dark wizard has been defeated. He assures them that the guards are on their way and everything will be fine, while trying to start a fire. Kanya asks how he learned to do that, since he's always busy at the castle. Aiel gets a little nervous and explains that you just rub 2 flammable things together to create heat. If Kanya hadn't been watching so closely, Aiel would have used her mana to create heat and save herself the trouble of using her hands. After some difficulty, he finally manages to light the fire. Kanya wonders if maybe she should have skipped the training, but Aiel says it wasn't her fault, just an unexpected mess. She then asks if he's been scared during all of this, realizing he's been acting very serious. Aiel decides to be more honest and admits that, as royal representatives, they have to hide their fear, even though the wyverns were quite terrifying. Kanya, seeing a softer side to him, holds his hand and thanks him for sticking with her through all the chaos. Aiel, feeling the moment, says that Kanya was scared from the beginning and that it broke her heart to see the guards lose their lives for nothing. He knows that the royal family is always at risk of assassination, but this is the first time Kanya has faced real danger, and it is difficult for her to deal with. Still, he remains focused on the main objective, getting them both home safely. Out of nowhere, a savage battle begins above them, between a wyvern and a griffin. Kanya wonders why they are fighting at this time, and Aiel, seeing a nest on the cliff, deduces that the wyvern is after the griffin cub. The wyvern manages to sink its teeth into the griffin's neck, causing it to fall onto the rocks below. Aiel and Kanya run to quickly get out of the way, avoiding the falling rocks. When the dust clears, they see the wyvern flying away, likely frightened by the griffin's blood in the air. But when Aiel looks around, Kanya is gone. He stands there, shocked, and sees her near the fallen griffin. He warns her to be careful, but she says it's okay, as the griffin is already dead. Aiel knows there's no stopping Kanya when she's curious. She looks at the griffin and wonders what they should do with it. Aiel, feeling a little uncomfortable, asks if she plans to bury him, but Kanya surprises him by saying she is worried about the griffin cub. Aiel says they can't do anything, and that they'll have to let nature take care of it, even though it seems harsh. However, Kanya thinks Aiel meant they should raise the cub together, leaving Aiel even more confused. Meanwhile, Kanya sees the guards arriving.